And if you wanna leave, I'm making sure you have to crawl out. Lord Massacre just to get set to law out. By the time I'm finished, there'll be a fallout. And if all goes as planned, it ain't just me, we all out.
What's up, my Wizards? Dev, that's BMTG down there. I got decks and stuff on the YouTubes. Something kind of special for you today. Long-time subscribers to the channel will know that when the format rotates, I like to start making decks a little early that don't have these sets that are rotating in them, just to sort of see how certain cards that will stick around in the format interact without other cards to hold them down, you know, just get a sneak peek of what's going to stay powerful in the format, you know, just see what happens. And today we're going to do that. We're going to do a deck with no cons and no Fate Reforged. That's what's rotating. Some people are still in the dark. Dragons of Tarkir, Magic Origins, they stick around until about October when the next block drops. So keep that in mind. Dragons of Tarkir and Magic Origins will stay in. The only things that rotate are Cons of Tarkir and Fate Reforged. We lose an awful lot, including fetch lands and a bunch of other crap when Cons and Fate Reforged rotate. But let's look at the positives, you know, and I think a lot of people are excited for fetch lands to rotate. Also, let me know in the comments how you feel about fetch lands rotating. But in any case, we have got a lot of ground to cover in the next few weeks here. And let me know if you know, one more thing in the comments, let me know if you want to see more of these no cons, no Fate Reforged decks, or if I, you know, should still focus for a couple of weeks on decks from the current format. I'm interested in that. But let's go ahead and hit what we've got today. We've got Golgari good stuff. There's a lot of, you know, really good cards in green and black, and we lose a lot of good stuff in white. We lose Siege Rhino, we lose Anafenza, and a bunch of Abzan Charm, you know. We lose a ton of stuff in white. So we can just play sort of a Abzan no mayo, you know, no white, a dry version of Abzan, and see what we can do. There's still a bunch of powerful cards. I'm running out of time, so let me go ahead and show you this deck. Start with the creatures, and the gruesome twosome sticks around in the format. 4 copies of Den Protector and 4 copies of Deathmist Raptor, both from Dragons of Tarkir. That does not rotate till October, and these are still going to be very, very strong cards until then, especially Den Protector. You know, with Tassiger not around in the format, Den Protector has to sort of pull double duty. You see them together a lot of the time. Not going to happen too much anymore. So Den Protector is, you know, still going to stay very powerful, very relevant, and Deathmist Raptor is a hard to remove thing, and I think the removal gets a little bit worse when Cons rotates. We're not going to play too much green in the deck, but I do think we need to make room for these guys. 1 copy of Nissa Vastwood Seer in the deck. It has a couple of functions in the deck. I don't have to tell you how good she is when you play her late and then flip her. She's card advantage, creates huge dudes for you. That's all good. Don't have to talk about that too much. Just amazing. Her ultimate wins the game, more or less. But she also has the function of helping us get that second green mana for Deathmist Raptor. I've already said we're not playing too many green cards in the deck, and we're very, you know, devoted to black. We've got like 10 cards in the deck that, you know, require double black in their casting costs. So we got a lot of black in the deck. We don't have much room for green. That being said, we have to make sure we can get that second green mana for Deathmist Raptor. Nissa helps out a little bit, and we're playing like 15 green sources too, so that also helps. But this is just a little push in that direction, and it's synergy worth noting. But mostly, she's going to be an early game blocker that helps thin your deck, get you an extra land when you need it, and when she flips, she's just ridiculous. So at least the 1 copy. I'll make room for Nissa. 3 copies of Wasteland Strangler. There's some slight Eldrazi elements in the deck, but not too much. We have, you know, 10 different ways of exiling things in the deck, so we can comfortably play a few copies of Wasteland Strangler. Is removal, that's always good. And it's just, you know, a 3-power body for 3 mana, which can also be a decent blocker. But mostly we're looking to remove a creature when it comes into play and leave a body behind, which we have a few different ways of reliably doing. So I want to make room for Wasteland Strangler. I just think it's one of the best black creatures in the whole format. This probably is the best black creature in the format. 2 copies of Kalitas, Traitor of Ghet, because we're running black. And Kalitas is just proven to be the kind of card, like if you can reliably make double black, you play Kalitas. Usually a 2 of. And honestly, I could play a 3 of Kalitas in this deck and be pretty comfortable with that. He's often a game winner. You know, really good synergy with Languish. Doesn't look like it. But if you can just get, you know, 2+1/+1 counters on him once, he survives the Languish, kill like 2 or 3 things, maybe more on their side of the field, and end up with a huge Kalitas, you know, really good at restabilizing for us on turn 4. You know, lifelink is amazing, really underrated ability there, but life gain is more relevant than ever, and so lifelink is really, really good right now. But Kalitas, just really good body, really good abilities, you know, can get really big over the course of the game, just absolutely perfect 4-drop for any mid-range deck that plays black. And another perfect 4-drop for a mid-range deck. 4 copies of Thought-Knot Seer in the deck, which is a way of exiling cards for Wasteland Strangler. And we've got something like 11 sources of colorless mana in the mana base. We can search up waste mana with Evolving Wilds, which I do think without fetches it may actually be important to play Evolving Wilds, especially with waste in the format. You can get away with playing like one waste, but I should have talked about that during the mana base talk. But Thought-Knot Seer is obviously just an amazing card in the format. It's also proven, just like Kalitas, to be amazing. It sees a ton of play in every deck almost every deck that plays Eldrazi, can make colorless mana. And is great for us. Not only does it help play Wasteland Strangler, like I've pointed out, but also just takes the best cards out of the hand. Like, what? That's amazing. So, yes, to Thought-Knot Seer. If we're making colorless mana, we're doing it mostly for this guy. Just a couple of Planeswalkers in the deck, 2 copies of Ob Nixilis. Just another example of a perfect card for a mid-range deck, Look at all this. Deathmist Raptor, Nissa, Vastwood Seer. We've got Wasteland Strangler, Thought-Knot Seer, Kalitas, and now Ob Nixilis. Just all the best mid-range cards. So I think Black-Green might actually have a really good mid-range shell. And Ob Nixilis, I think, belongs in it, Draws cards, kills creatures, everything you want it to do. And for 5 mana, that's not bad at all. Usually comes down, eliminates the best threat on their side of the board immediately, and then starts drawing cards for you in subsequent turns. So, yeah, Ob Nixilis, I don't see why we wouldn't play this guy. He's just always really good in everything I play him in. And I wish he would catch on a little bit in the format. We may have to wait for rotation. I think the format will maybe slow down a turn. But again, depends on Shadows of Ruinous Path and what happens with that. But it looks like it's becoming a lot more about big creatures. Mostly with the exit of a couple of cards. We lose Valorous Stance, we lose Crackling Doom. Those are great ways of taking care of huge guys. So huge guys might actually have ways of being even better in the coming format, which doesn't bode well for Eldrazi haters. I think Eldrazi may have a real place in this upcoming standard. But again, all remains to be seen. It's all just speculation. 15 spells in the deck, they're all black, Just black has some of the best spells in the entire format right now between its removal and its discard. Let's start with some removal. 3 copies of Grasp of Darkness here in this green-black deck. You could play Ultimate Price, it sticks around the format. But, Autarka Red is not going to be at all a deck. It loses Monastery Swiftspear, and that's really the backbone of its whole operation. It loses Temur Battle Rage, it loses a lot of things. So it's just not going to be the same deck. And what aggro deck takes its place? I don't know, but I do know that there's a bunch of colorless Eldrazi floating around in the format, so I just don't know that Ultimate Price is going to be good, really, at all, as much as it is now, because I thought it was going to be bad when Theros rotated. Hey, Ziggy. But it still sees a lot of play, mostly because Autarka Red is such an important deck, and Rally the Ancestors has a lot of monocolored creatures, so Ultimate Price is good against that. But obviously Rally won't be a deck anymore. Rally the Ancestors isn't even going to be a card. So just Ultimate Price, and there's just so many Eldrazi running around that I think are going to be even more dominant when the format rotates. So I just don't think Ultimate Price will be a very good card. That said, Grasp of Darkness is pretty darn good. The only thing is we pay a price in having to pay 2 black mana on our second turn. But very heavy black, and we've got like 19 black sources in the mana base, so we can very reliably get that 2 black mana on the second turn. It's worth it. Instant speed, kill pretty much any guy they can play by turn 2 or 3, and is just an all-star piece of removal. And I wouldn't mind playing 4 copies. Grasp is that good. 4 copies of Transgress the Mind. I'm playing all 4 here to sort of help out Wasteland Strangler, get us to that, 10th copy of a card that can exile things. Because I wouldn't mind playing 3 copies of Transgress, but honestly, out of 4 of, the card is still really good. Out of 4 of reliable second turn play a lot of the time, and can take out, in the current format at least, a ton of stuff. And if the format gets a little bigger when it rotates, then Transgress is going to be an even better card. And it's already, I think, worth a 4 of in a deck it's a mid-range deck. We don't play a whole lot of 2-drop creatures, so this is a really good thing to be able to do on turn 2 and just sort of ensure that they won't be able to outclass us a little bit later on in the game. Transgress is very good. 2 copies of Ruinous Path in the deck, which, again, if the format slows, Ruinous Path gets better. It doesn't see a ton of play. You'll often see it as a 1, sometimes, 2 of, at the very, very most. And that's what we're doing here is the 2 of. So I just think it's really, really reliable removal. Planeswalkers, maybe even more important, will sort of, from what it looks like, maybe have a higher ratio of playable Planeswalkers when the format rotates, depending on what we see in Shadows. But it looks like we may have a higher ratio of playable Planeswalkers, considering that we lose a set. We won't have Favor Forged, but I guess Shadows of Ruinous Path replaces Cons. But we'll just have a smaller card pool overall. So we may have a higher ratio of playable walkers, making Ruinous Path a little bit better. Not only that, but it's a creature late game that kills a thing, so that's good. Just Ruinous Path I've always liked. So I'm playing a couple copies. Just unconditional removal is great. 2 copies of Complete Disregard, another way of sort of helping out a Wasteland Strangler. And although I've been talking about how the format gets bigger, people will obviously still play things you can hit with a Complete Disregard fairly reliably, you know. And this can often, on the play especially, hit a Jace, which is going to still be an important card, you know, unfortunately, but still be an important card. So this can hit a Jace, can hit a Nissa, and a ton of other stuff. So Complete Disregard has never really been dead unless drawn very, very late for me, and it's just definitely worth playing. Great that it's instant speed, too, so yes. 3 copies of Read the Bones in the deck. I just really want something that draws us cards. And yeah, we've got Ob Nixilis, we've got Nissa once we flip her, but that takes a very long time, and Ob Nixilis takes a long time too. Sometimes I just like to have a really good, you know, mid to early game way of drawing cards and scrying, sort of helping us out, especially against certain decks. And I will say you could play Hangarback Walker as a 3-of in this slot instead of Read the Bones. I just really, really like having a way of drawing cards, especially in a mid-range deck that wants both a refill and a way to peruse its options, you know. But, you know, you could play Hangarback if you were so inclined. I just played with it for a while and decided I'd like to draw cards better. So Read the Bones has been nothing but great for as far as I'm concerned. And 1 copy of Languish to sort of round things off here. You know, we've got Flaying Tendrils in the sideboard, so I don't see any reason to play more than the 1 main deck Languish. I have been talking about how the format may get slightly bigger, and so you may want to play more Languish, but I'm just not really into it. I think that we could probably just take out aggro and stuff like that with the Flaying Tendrils out of the board, and with the 1 Languish in the main deck, sort of cover our options against aggro and mid-range, you know, make sure we have good game 1 against them. But for the most part, it won't take out bigger creatures that may see play. If creatures that big see play other than huge Eldrazi, we'll have to wait and see. So Languish is kind of a gamble. It's either a 1 or 2-of in this deck, but in my testing, I've gone with a 1-of, and that's worked out tremendously for me. Especially considering we don't want to wipe the board of our early game creatures either. So push-pull with Languish, you know, admittedly. But, you know, I've gone with 1 copy. Let me know in the comments again there how you feel about that. 1 or 2 copies of Languish, or none in the main. Who knows? That's the whole main deck here. Let's take a look at the land base. 25 lands here, and it feels really good to build a truly, what I feel is a competitive deck that's not 3 or 4 or 5 colors even, so, and build a good mana base for that with a little bit of breathing room, although we are playing a 3rd color and colorless, you know, I fully acknowledge that. But we have 11 ways of making colors, 15 ways of making green, 19 ways of making black, all very reliable, you know. Anywhere between 10 and 12 colorless sources is where I'd be comfortable. I'm splitting the difference at 11, and it's been very reliable, especially considering we get to play Blighted Fen, which has been great. It's just, Blighted Fen is actually really, really good, especially against, you know, Ojutai, which I'll talk about too in the sideboard. Ojutai will probably get better in this upcoming format, considering we lose Crackling Doom. And losing Crackling Doom is just going to make Ojutai much, much, much better. But he's really good right now. So Blighted Fen can be really good on, you know, on curve against Ojutai. So there's that to point out too. And here's our incredibly important sideboard. We do fairly well in game 2. It's a, you know, parity between games as far as I'm concerned, because we've got a lot of options that we need to have. Bearer of Silence is the thing I wanted to talk about in relation to Ojutai. Like, you know, Ojutai I think just gets better without Crackling Doom in the format, like way, way better without Crackling Doom in the format. Bigger creatures in general do, but Ojutai especially because of the Hexproof. So something like Bearer of Silence can be very, very important to take Ojutai out. And really is just a good card in and of itself. Ultimate price against the decks that will play, you know, monocolored creatures, because it's just against those decks better than Grasp of Darkness. There's a few things. Warping Wail, we're open to that because we have colorless mana in the main deck. Infinite Obliteration is still going to be an important card because it looks like Ulamog decks will still be around, you know, Flaying Tendrils against all the aggro stuff that may be in the format. Virulent Plague, because tokens, they'll definitely still be around. And then Duress and Hangarback Walker. Really, Duress against control decks and the like. And then Hangarback Walker as a good 2-drop that can control us, you know, can help us out against aggro a little bit. So that's all the sideboard cards right there. Definitely a reason to play each and every one of them. And I would like to make room for like Natural State in this board, but I feel like Hangarback Walker is probably more important to play than Natural State. But yeah, that's my thought process. And here are your power rankings. The final score of 67. There's a couple of things I'd like to point out. Power actually verges on a 9, I would say, but not quite. Because if you go down the list, every single card is incredibly powerful in the deck. And the other thing I want to talk about is resiliency. Resiliency is very, very close to a 7 in the deck, and if we were playing Hangarback Walker main, I would make resiliency a 7. But just with the Dim Protector and Deathmist Raptor and a couple of other things that we're doing, that really helps the resiliency out, but it doesn't quite push it to a 7 in my book. But 67 is still a very respectable score, and the price is pretty decent too. This deck will cost you about $200 on TCG Play, or anywhere between $180 and about $240 on TCG, and you can probably get it for around $200 solid. So $200 sounds a lot better than some of the decks we see in the format. There's no Jaces, there's no fetches, obviously, because fetch lands rotate, so it takes the pressure off of your wallet slightly, and you still get to play what is a very competitive deck. You can play this deck at your next FNM, and I think do fairly well with it even in the current standard. So let me know how you felt about this deck. And I was actually thinking about doing it slightly different. Green-Black has a lot of options in this format. I've dealt sort of a Golgari Eldrazi, a Golgazi, if you will, deck here. But you could also build a sort of no-mayo version of Rally the Ancestors. You just don't play Rally, but you get to play, Zulaport Cutthroat, Nantuko Husk, you get Liliana, a bunch of stuff. You still get Hangarback Walker, you get Elvish Visionary. I'm missing a bunch of crap, that you still get Catacomb Sifter, So there's a bunch of Collected Company. You still get to keep a bunch of cards, just not Rally the Ancestors. So you could probably still try to make something Golgari that kills with Zulaport Cutthroat and Nantuko Husk, but I went the sort of mid-range good stuff route here. And there's probably even more options. I was thinking about Golgari Grow, a deck that plays cards that get bigger as the game goes on, like Undergrowth Champion, Sylvan Advocate, Rock Shambler, and a bunch of other stuff. So you can take Golgari in a bunch of directions right now. That's all I've got for now. Let me know what post, cons, and favorite Forge decks you want to see coming up. Just sort of how does the format change, or how does this deck change without these cards in it? Let me know how you feel, because I know we don't have Shadows of Innistrad just yet. I get that. We haven't seen hardly any of that set. But again, it's always fun just to see how cards interact with other cards without other cards in the format, if that sentence made any sense at all. If you enjoyed the content or the cat, like, share, comment, and subscribe if you're new especially. And I will see you guys later. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.